This show is sponsored by Realtor Cynthia Bear, Putting Down Roots. Visit your in-town real estate specialist in Atlanta at cynthiabaer.com.
You are now tuned in to the Good Gracious Show. Welcome.
Howdy, Good Gracious family. It is Wednesday, December 5th, and I have been gone way too long. It is now on to the bright and shiny time of the holiday season with Hanukkah and Christmas and Festivus and whatever else you celebrate heading into the new year almost, so the end of 2018. And this is podcast 120, good gracious, who'd have thought, 120. And I'm Boyd Baker, your intrepid host. And so glad that you are listening. It's been a minute, but I got to sit down with Nicki Salcedo, an author, and just a really interesting soul, very creative and very warm, and it was fun to hear how her mind thinks. She was kind enough to come on to my last Good Gracious live variety show, and I don't know if I would have done this. I don't know if I could have done this, but she decided to change up her act at the very last minute, having never been on the show, being live in front of a mic, and she did it, like from that afternoon in the car on the way to the show. So, and she killed it. So it just shows you the talent she has. And also on this episode is a musician from Florida, Michael McArthur. I think you're really going to enjoy him. His songwriting is spectacular, and he's one of the few people. We talked briefly about music off mic, but you don't find too many musicians who don't play gigs in bars or have ever done like cover band stuff. He is straight on to his music. It's my way or the highway, and he does house concerts, and he's found a great rhythm for what works for him as a musician and artist. And I think there's a big lesson to be taken from that. And I hope more people pay attention and kind of share that news and say, you can blaze your own path, and it doesn't have to be rocket science, but it might feed your soul a little more. So I'm hoping this episode feeds your soul. And, I'm going to leave it there. Please listen and enjoy.
My name is Nicki Salcedo. I'm a writer in Atlanta and all over the world. And I love words, I love reading, I love books, and I love encouraging people to write.
And just out of curiosity, how long have you been officially a writer? I mean, did you find that there's a time in your life when, boom, from this date, I am now a writer? Or do you think it kind of crept up on you?
It probably crept up on me. I've always been writing, but there was a brief period of time, maybe in 2003, where I had an opportunity to write quite a bit. My day job had a little slow period, and I could write at lunch, and I didn't have kids. And I wrote a book that year.
Was that just on your own? You just said,
on my own.
Do this.
Just on my own, and I didn't know anything about writing communities. I had studied writing in college, and I'd always been writing, but I never really thought about writing a book. And I wrote maybe 400 pages. It's awful, but
Did you write it and then publish it?
I did not publish it.
You just felt like you needed to prime the pump, kind of get everything out of your system and figure out how it works?
Yes, I had an idea for years, and it was like this historical fiction. It was like a sweeping drama, Game of Thrones style, like actually, castles and intrigue and murder and mayhem. And I set this up as my project. And
how long did it take you to write that?
A few months, not very long.
Because it was passion, and it was kind of fun, and it was new.
It was passion. I didn't, I just worked and I wrote. I didn't have a lot of other filler activities in my life, and I wrote a little bit during the day, which some writers, that's an unusual opportunity. I can't do that now, but at that time I could write during the day, and I ended up with a whole book. And writing short fiction is nothing like writing a novel. And by the time I finished writing the book, I realized I knew nothing about writing the book. So that was 2003.
So that just kind of that turned your mind saying, this probably isn't for me, this long form? Or
no,
it's going to take a different...
I was like, I can do it. If you can write, 100,000 words once, you can do it again and hopefully do it better. So that definitely got me started writing and thinking about writing more seriously. So I would say my professional career started with that first book, just to figure out, like, what does writing as a career look like? Yeah. I'd never really thought about it. I always thought writing something you do under the cover of night or for fun, or you hide it in a diary. So had you written short pieces? Like, had you written short fiction or poetry or something? Yes.
But you didn't necessarily, you weren't sure where you were or who you were as a writer. You were still trying to define it, right? Yes. Am I a writer, or am I just kind of like doodling kind of thing?
Exactly. If you study writing in college, you usually choose between fiction and poetry. It's typically short fiction because you have these small session semesters to work. I hope colleges now have some novel writing classes, but it was mainly short fiction. And I was a double emphasis, so I was unusual in my college experience because I did both poetry and fiction. So I spent a lot of time writing, creative writing, had excellent, phenomenal teachers. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the experience I had. But
where was that?
That was at Stanford University. And it's nothing like writing a book.
Yeah.
A book is a completely different type of writing and writing skill. And I think every section of my life I learned a new writing skill. So I learned to write a book, and then later on I started to learn how to write essays, which was also new. And I'm always excited to learn something new about writing.
That's kind of fascinating, but I'm wondering now, how did you take that experience, and what did that mean to you? Mm-hmm. Did you now say, okay, I'm going to put my efforts forward.
Yes.
I'm a writer. I'm an author now.
I did. I went out and researched writing groups and also publishing, even though I said that book wasn't very good. I was like, well, what do you do with a book once it's done? Yeah. Like, how do you find an agent? How do you get to publishers? So I started participating in the writing community in Atlanta. So there's writing groups and conferences and ways for newbies to learn. And I just went to learn, and how to improve your story. And then I realized, there's a way to write a story with a beginning, middle, and end and conflict. And I studied for many years my new form of writing, which was books. And I wrote several books along the way that were just kind of the exercise of writing. So that was definitely where I was more seriously entering my writing career.
And did you find opportunities through those writing groups or anything else to get your work published or get it out there? Or did you just have to take your own guide?
No, I definitely learned everything from these writing organizations. Some of it was also short. A lot of writers have blogs, so I participated in some group blogs. We'd each take a turn once a week and just put short pieces out there about the writing life itself. And then you also learn about submitting to agents and editors and contests and what a contract looks like. So I did sell my first book through that experience, which I think was a much better book than the first one. But you have to write 3 or 4 before you figure out.
Yeah. So you sold your first book, but it wasn't really your first book because that's the secret book that's under your bed in the shoebox, right?
Yes. Books 1, 2, 3, and 4 are probably going to always remain hidden.
Yeah.
But I would have maternity leave from work, and in the 6 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks I was away from work.
Just gestation of child and book.
A gestation of child and book. So I would write a book while I was on my maternity leave for all of my kids. So I have several books under the bed.
Do you ever pull them out and go, is there a nugget there? Is there something that maybe now that I've done more,
Yes,
I could
one
fix
of them
it?
I'm going to look back on. It's more of like a traditional Southern fiction, and it's probably different than when I first imagined it. But there are some good things in that book, and I'll go back to it.
Yeah. So what was your first published piece then?
It was a romantic suspense novel called All Beautiful Things. Came out in 2014, set in Atlanta. So there's some scenes very, present for people who know and have lived in Atlanta, and a little romance. Not too much, a little bit. I wish there was
So
more.
it's not the sultry romance kind of thing necessarily.
No, I tried that.
Yeah.
It's probably not my skill set.
Yeah.
But I love romance, so there's definitely that element in there.
Nice. And then, and how did you, as a writer, how did you determine what your success was? Obviously, you're going to write this book, it's going to get published, and all of a sudden you're in New York, right? That's the way it goes. You're on Oprah's show and you're just talking about it. But that doesn't really happen for a whole lot of folks.
Yeah. Or anyone.
Yeah. So how did you come out of that saying that was a great experience, or that was financially is okay?
Yeah, writing financially is just not great, but I'm fortunate to have a day job, and I'd probably write faster if I more depended on writing income. But it is something you can make a living off of. And for me, the success is doing it. I still love writing, and it's hard to explain to people, like, you don't have 10 books, or you're not a New York Times bestselling author, you're not whatever. But I'm like, every time I sit down to write, I'm really happy to do it. So
what inspires you then?
Everything. When I'm mad and the world is wrong, I want to write and fix it. And in fiction, you can fix everything, and nobody knows exactly what you're poking at. And when I'm happy, and I think more people should experience happiness, I write. So I write when I'm mad, I write when I'm sad, I write when I'm happy. I have to be careful. I mean, I can write all the time.
So if somebody would just say, Nicki, we'll pay your bills to get you going, you would just sit around all day long and write. Do you think? Or do you need the balance of taking yourself away from that creative energy to enjoy being in it?
I probably need a balance. So let's go back to the first question. If someone wants to pay and have me write, I would figure out a way.
Yeah. Let's not close that door just yet, Boyd.
But it is nice. My job is a corporate job. It's analytical, it's technical, it's strategy, and it's different from my writing world. So I go there, and I'm excited to come back. And I would definitely, I could probably fill up most of a day writing if given the chance. But I do the best that I can balancing, and it's good. I hope people who write or are interested in writing find a way for it to be satisfying, even if it's like rage and it's like, political, social activism, and it's painful. I still hope they find a way to nurture themselves and their souls with it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was listening back to when you came on Good Gracious show, thanks to Allison Law, our friend,
Yay,
Literary
Allison.
Atlanta. Yay, other podcaster. And you had said that you came, originally you had something in mind that you were going to do, and then you changed your mind on what you were going to read. Just right, not too long before? I'm just curious, because...
That's a true story.
Yeah, so... I thought, this would be great. We'll have Nicki on. She'll get to talk, and she can read something or share something. And then you changed. I'm just wondering what went through your mind as an artist, or did you feel there was something timely that all of a sudden it just kind of hits you and you can't not do it?
Something hits you and you can't not. That's very unusual. So I'm partly creative, but I'm partly like very organized and structured. So I like to know what I'm doing and saying, and I like to practice. The theme of the show was strong Southern women. It's like a topic I loved. I grew up in the South. I consider myself Southern. It's one of my themes, which is what makes you Southern and people who've denied that I'm Southern. And I just love that topic. And so I did have another piece that I had written that I thought would be a good fit for the show. And earlier that day, there was an incident with my kids and some bunnies in my front yard. And my kids were in tears. My kids were saying, and my kids are not highly emotional kids. They're like me. I try to raise them to be like cyborgs and like robots. They're pretty stoic.
Good for you.
No emotions, kids. But that way I know when something's wrong. Like when they're emotional, I know something's wrong. And I had two of my children standing in the front yard in tears. We tried to save these bunnies, and I didn't get my last minute prep time. And being on stage and being on mic is actually pretty nerve-wracking for me. So it's another skill, like writing a book. I'm learning a new skill. I think it's okay to learn stuff and not be great and not like it and still try it. And
so you thought at the last second, let me change everything and
at
do
the last second, I printed out the piece that I was going to read, and I grabbed 4 blank sheets of paper, no lines, just printer paper. And I hopped in the car. It was like a lift. And I'm sure he's never seen this happen. And I had a clipboard, and the first word I wrote in the lift as it drove me from my house to the venue. And it was maybe not a very far ride, maybe 15, 20 minutes. Not long enough. I was like, there needs to be more traffic.
Because I need quiet time in the backseat of this car.
But I thought what happened was also very Southern and strong, and maybe even more evocative than what I had originally planned. And so, and that's the first time I've ever spontaneously. But I also am trying to trust myself.
Yeah.
And
I think it's awesome.
it's okay. But that's not my nature. My nature is to like stick with a plan.
Well, I think you're lying because your nature is what made you do that. So maybe your nature's changing.
Maybe my nature's changing.
All these cyborg rules you have may not be hard and fast.
At least keep one cyborg rule at all time.
No.
If you can.
That's fair.
Yeah.
You can change it, but keep one of them.
Keep one.
Well, so what are you working on right now?
So I am working on a sequel to that first fiction novel. So it's a mystery suspense set in Atlanta. I've been working on it for some time, but just putting a little bit more energy into it right now. And it's fun, and there's still some romance, maybe, not sultry romance, but there's something, and there's some murder and some cool, like I have some favorite places around Atlanta. And whenever books and movies are filmed in Atlanta, I'm like, oh, you're not catching the very best secret parts of Atlanta.
Right. Yeah. They don't know the city like
they
we would.
Don't. Mm-hmm. They don't. And a lot of it is based on real experiences. In the first book, there's a body in Piedmont Park, and that came from a real experience I had with boot camp in Piedmont Park. We'd meet at like 6:30, and we went out, running into the park, and there was a body. It wasn't dead, but we had to call 911, and they came and resuscitated this person. And I'm like, that's just like the seed of a good mystery.
Yeah.
So everything I put in my books actually comes from something I've witnessed or something I've heard around Atlanta.
So it's not true fiction. It's just modified life.
No. Modified life, just little kernels of true things and how people react and think. Otherwise, just purely fictional.
Right. So are you writing, do you also try to do short pieces, or do you have other outlets where you can, share those, and where would that be?
So I have lots of short fiction or not fiction, fiction and nonfiction, a lot of essays online. I've written for Decatur-ish and Atlanta Loop for several years. And I'm trying to experiment with something new, which is movie reviews. And it's because I really like to write. But in the current political climate, I feel very limited into what I want to write about. And I'm sure there's people doing a better job of talking about society right now. And I love movies. So I'm trying to see if I can have a new column that starts up maybe beginning of next year and maybe before the end of the year if everything works out. And it's just movie reviews. And I mentioned that I have a day job, and my day job allows me to travel, so I watch movies on the airplane. I go to the movie theater a lot here when I'm home. I love the movies. You have to turn off your technology. You can't go in with your computer, your phone, your tablet, your whatever. And I love turning it off.
Yeah. Do you feel, have you always been that way, that movies?
I always liked movies. I think it's definitely much more of a satisfying escape these days than like before. It's just like, I like Star Trek. I like Star Wars. I like zombies. I like, and I'm going to go to the movies. Now it's definitely more of like a therapeutic thing.
Well, and I feel like for me, I watched ridiculous amounts of television and movies growing up. And back then, way back in the 1800s when I was doing that, you couldn't, you didn't have a lot of options. So the movie was on, so you were watching. And so I was forced to watch all these amazing classic movies, by today's standards. And all that taught me, though, was storycraft. It's like over time it just seeped in, and so that I could see a movie, and as it started going, I'd go, oh yeah, that guy's going there, and that's going to happen this. And it was interesting how I could start to piece the puzzle together, and I never thought about it until my wife, and we'd watch something, and I'd start going, yeah, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and she'd go, why? I'd say, just watch. I got 5 minutes. It's like, I've seen this. It's okay. So
yeah. And movies are a good way to have a conversation. It's hard for two people to have read the same book, but maybe they've seen the same movie. So I think it's kind of an easier connection point. And sometimes the storytelling is good. Sometimes it's awful, like you said. And I sometimes love an awful movie. I'll go in a movie and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I hate everybody. This is so stupid. Yeah. And at the end I was like, but that was enjoyable.
Yeah, you need that. You need your fluff every now and then. Yeah. And you need some trash. And sometimes you don't know if maybe they were trying to make it kind of bad.
Yes.
It's when they do that, it's really fun because you're like, it's like watching a car wreck. You're like, now they couldn't really think this character was going to be like this, right? But,
oh, yeah. So that's fun. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted on
Please do.
If my official movie reviews hit the pages.
The big time. Yeah.
It'll be funny and introspective and
I hope so.
All that.
Thanks. Well, if anybody wants to learn more about your writing or find out what's going on, that's the best way for them to do that.
I have a website, and it's just my name, NickiSalcedo.com.
Okay.
And if you basically look up my name, there'll be all sorts of funny articles I've written in the AJC here in Atlanta, Decatur-ish, Atlanta Loop, and I also teach some writing classes. So
where do you teach?
Decatur Writers Studio. So we have writing classes all year, actually, and for every type of writer. So poetry, nonfiction, revision. Some are like a series, and some are just a Saturday crash course.
Well, thanks for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Michael McArthur, and I'm a singer-songwriter from Lakeland, Florida.
And how long have you been a singer-songwriter? You were telling me earlier you were starting to say you never really wanted to do that cover band bar thing.
Yeah.
But did you just feel like that was a natural, like you had to, like that was kind of paying your dues kind of thing?
It is, in the same breath, I respect people that do those types of gigs because you earn some serious experience points playing at bars, and you're playing 3-4 hours a night. But for me, I felt if I started playing the bars that I would have less time to write my own songs, and the thing that I cared most about was having songs of my own to play for people. So I vowed from the beginning to not play, to not do the bar thing. So I never did. I haven't done one. And
You've never?
Never done one. Not
Whoa.
one. Not even one time.
Man.
But it's forced me to find another way to do it. So I've written tons of songs over the years, but to answer your original question, I've been writing songs since high school and playing guitars. You know, my grandfather bought me my first guitar when I was 15, and it was this like really cheap. I still have it, but this really cheap, like made in Japan Fender acoustic. Got it for like $100 or something. And anyway, just taught myself to play and started writing songs shortly after. And I've been pursuing music as a professional career for almost 10 years.
Yeah. Do you think was the impetus to play to emulate music you heard and things that maybe as a teen that you liked, or was it because you knew you wanted to write songs? You know what I mean?
From the jump, I knew I wanted to write songs.
Really?
Yeah. And the motivation, though, from the beginning was to emulate people that I grew up listening to, people that I loved, people like Van Morrison and James Taylor and Bill Withers and those guys that, Bruce Springsteen, like those guys that played an instrument and wrote songs. And when you listen to their music, you feel like they are telling you a story personally. It's a conversation. And I wanted to have that. Like, I have such a deep connection with music, and I always have, even before I started playing. And I wanted to be able to connect with people on the same level that I was connecting to these artists that I'd never met or seen, And it's because of the songs that they would write and the stories they would tell. So I wanted to do the same thing.
Did your family instill that in you, do you think? Or was it just you going off on your own?
I came from a musical family. So some of my earliest memories of music are of my uncle. When he was my age, he pursued music, but he did the bar thing. And we had this conversation early on, and I told him, I was like, I don't want to do the bar thing. He was like, I don't think you should. He was like, when I first started playing, I played at bars, and I earned a really great living. But I couldn't do anything else because that's how I found my way.
You didn't have, and you didn't have time. I mean, it does. It's a trade-off.
So, but he still plays. Like, we play together. I just came off tour. I went up the East Coast, and he's up in Massachusetts, and every time we see each other, we play. So I remember him playing. My parents always had music on, in the house, and I had a very eclectic. Like, my mom's Hispanic, so she's listening to like salsa music and merengue and stuff like that, and then my dad's the one, listening to like James Taylor and Bill Withers and Stevie Wonder and all those guys. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of always been a part of my life.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's always a guitar somewhere in a corner,
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So when you started writing songs, were you? I mean, I think part of the process, like you said, doing the bar gigs, is also part of honing your craft, and doing cover songs is just like painters. They emulate other painters to figure out styles and figure out what they can do and can't do. I think music can be a lot the same way. Have you found yourself, your path kind of staying where you originally envisioned, or has it morphed and gone in different directions?
Over the years, it's changed forms several times, because part of finding your way, making a career out of music, is you think you know how it works, and as you go, you realize you don't, and so it's just like that thing, you don't know what you don't know, so you're just kind of blindly walking down this road hoping that you get to where you're going, and but it's all necessary, it's all part of the process. So like when I first started writing songs, at the time I thought they were okay, but looking back on them now, it's like, I can't believe I played that for people. I can't believe
and I was so proud.
And I was so happy about that. But it's also kind of beautiful because you can see this thing growing, like in yourself and maturing over time, and so I look back on it with fondness, and I played a lot in my bedroom. So I wasn't playing hours a day at the bar.
Right.
I was playing a lot in my bedroom, and part of that was, just to be completely honest, is I had like terrible stage fright in the beginning. Terrible stage fright. I wouldn't even play for my mom, you know.
Really?
And she, like, I could do
Yeah,
no
she's your
wrong.
mother,
It's my
right?
mom, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I had terrible stage fright, and it took me.
So what was that first gig like? The first one you did, whether it was a house concert, was it a family thing? What was your first?
My first proper show was, so when I was 19. So this is like going to that terrible stage fright. And when I was 19, I started a restaurant with my brother in our hometown. It's a coffee house, and I did that so I'd have an excuse not to do music, because the thing that terrified me was playing for people. And so we started this restaurant. It's still open today. My brother still owns it, but I would eventually leave to pursue music. And my first proper concert was at the restaurant. We shut it down like on a Sunday night, and
Just invited all your friends.
invited everybody we knew.
Everybody.
Yeah, and I played acoustic, and I had a buddy with me, Josh, who still plays with me. He played acoustic as well, and I can remember. I think we only did like 8 songs or something, because that's all we had.
Yeah.
You know, that's all
And
the
you weren't
songs I
going to
had.
do covers, so.
I was doing covers, so all songs I had. So, but I can remember that rush that you get when you feel so much anxiety and nervousness about something. You get that blood rush, and your vision blurs, and you're just trying to get through the thing. You know, I was terrified. I was like physically shaking up there, and I remember getting done, and people coming up to me, and I know I didn't do well. They were being kind, but they're like, "Oh, it's a great job, man," you know, whatever. But I can remember feeling that sense, even though I knew I was a nervous wreck, that sense of accomplishment
That you made it through.
that I made through. Yeah, and I didn't, like, I was no longer so scared to do this thing that I wasn't even willing to try.
Yeah.
You know,
So the second one, was it easier?
a little bit easier.
Yeah,
a
each
little
one
bit
a
easier
little bit
each
easier.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have anxiety about it. You
Well,
know?
I think most artists do.
Yeah.
I mean, on the outside, it may not show, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's those butterflies or anxiety that actually
Yeah.
gets you the performance that you want. You know,
Exactly.
on some level. But I also think that we are our own worst critics, obviously, and we think, oh my gosh, I was just stuttering, I was sweating,
Yeah.
I looked so bad, and people
Yeah.
go, I didn't see that
Exactly.
at all.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, those little demons that we have.
It's so nuanced to you as the performer, because you feel every movement, right? You hear every note.
Oh yeah,
and
you hear everybody in the crowd.
Yeah,
you know,
every sniff,
everything. Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
you know. So it's so nuanced. So the minute you do, you know, guff a note, or, you know, a little pitchy on that line or whatever, like your brain is it's like a freight train, or mine is anyway, and you're over analyzing every move.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So part of what playing live has done for me over the years is get me more to the point where I go, before I start a show, I tell myself, I know I'm going to mess up. But it's in those moments that I feel like they're sort of endearing, because they make you human. So
Right.
people, whether they notice or not, you know, it makes you human. You're not this robot that can do this thing perfectly or whatever. And I don't want to be, you know.
Right.
So
I've seen plenty of musicians, you know, as you mentioned it, I think, where they've started a song and they've been in the wrong key or
Mhm.
something, you know,
Mhm.
they didn't have the capo right and on the
Yeah.
guitar, and they stop and go, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, well, it sounded right to me.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
most of the audience is really clueless.
Yeah.
It's just, you got to remember that you got to tell yourself that each time.
Yeah.
They're clueless.
They
I'm
don't
going
know.
to screw up.
Yep.
Nobody's going to know.
yeah, yeah.
So you said that you've made house concerts kind of your drive on how you get your music out and how you connect with people. What has been the it's a business, right? Most people don't realize that the arts are business on some level, especially if you're trying to be a musician and you don't want to work construction all the time. And
Right.
How do you put those two together? How did you find out that that you could make it on your own without playing, you know, just standard bar gigs or out for hire stuff? Wait, did you learn from somebody else, or were you just kind of making it up?
Well, actually, so for years I was putting out EPs, and when I put out an EP, it was all very scattershot. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I knew that I needed to put music out, and I knew I needed to play shows, and I'm managing everything myself. So I put an EP out, and scratch and claw and do everything I could to get this thing made. Crowdfunding, recording some at home, recording some at a friend's basement studio, whatever. And then finally cobbling together this piece of work, and then releasing it and having this big I did it. And oh, but I got to play some shows, you know. Right. So then you're trying to book.
It's only
shows.
Half the job.
Yeah, and you're booking the shows. And you're like, I guess I got to do a music video or something, and you do that. So, going back to my uncle, he suggested I play a house concert, and I was familiar with the idea of house concerts. It's not a new idea. It's not popular. There are a lot of people that do it, but at this point, I've played a ton, and every time I ask people, have you been to a house concert before? And 9 people out of every 10 have never even heard of this idea, So anyway, so he convinced me to do one at his house in Massachusetts, going back to being completely terrified of this thing. It's so much more difficult to play to a small group of people than it is to play in a theater full of people. And I've done both. Right. And
you can ignore the mass; they become a mass.
Yeah.
But it becomes very personal when.
Right, but I do enjoy there's just this certain level of connection that you have when you play a house concert for that small group. But anyway, so I did my uncle. I did my first one with him, got done. I did really well, and I got done, and I loved it so much. And, I sold merch, and at the end of the night, I was like, if I can do more of these house concerts, I could earn a legitimate living doing this. Super grassroots, I had one person come up to me after the show saying, I want to do this at my house, And so it kind of grew from there. When I'm going to put together a tour, I'll just on social media say, hey, I'm putting together my fall house concert tour. If you're interested in having me perform in your home, shoot me a message, and I'll get hits from all over the country. And I'll put together the route and hit the road.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you try to cobble in any venues as well?
I do.
Just folks you've visited in the past or you thought you want to touch base with?
I'll play an occasional, coffee shop or winery or a small club. But you're talking about music being a business. The venue business is a business too. And so the other thing that's good about these house concerts is the minute I call to try to book a show at a public venue in a town that I've no real following in.
Right.
Their first question is, oh, we love your music. The album sounds great. Can you bring 100 people guaranteed? Right. Well, no, I've never played, Right. So, well, sorry, we can't. And then you're like, oh, well, can I open up for somebody? Is there somebody I can open up for? And I just found I was doing so much work to get so few gigs that ultimately didn't pay.
Right.
Yeah. So I've opened up for some people, and a lot of those gigs are you're playing for free. You can sell merch, and I'll sell just enough CDs to pay for my gas and food for the night. Right. But that's not a way to earn a living.
Right.
So the house concerts was the way for me to earn a living. I'm playing to 20 or 30 people a night, but it's a completely captivated audience, and I'm creating these very real relationships with people through the music.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So what's the plan for the coming year, for the new year?
So I back in July I made a record, my first full-length album, and recorded it at. I drove from Florida to Los Angeles and recorded at United Recording Studios, which is a pretty classic studio. It used to be Ocean Way, now it's and it's right on Sunset Boulevard. It's where Beach Boys recorded Pet Sounds, and Elvis. They have pictures of Elvis on the wall, and Sinatra. And
you just wanted to have that. You just wanted that imprint for some. You just felt like you needed to.
Well, that just happened. So I actually recorded with a guy named Ryan Freeland, who's a multiple Grammy Award winning producer, and he's recorded like Ray LaMontagne and Bonnie Raitt and Alan Toussaint and a lot of people. And I sent him some of my demos that I'd made at home. And
he said, come on out.
Yeah, he loved them, and we got on the phone, and I was like, yeah, I want to make a record. And so he has a studio at his home, but the type of record that we talked about making, it just made more sense to do it at a proper studio. So we went to United, and we made this record in 4 days, live as a band. So all the vocals on the album are live. We didn't overdub any vocals, you know.
It's a good feeling.
That was great. I mean, I couldn't do that, you know. I've been working at this for a long time, and you know, every year I notice that I get better at my craft. I couldn't have done this any other year. But when we finished the album, I felt like I did the absolute best I could at the time, you know, and it turned out great, and I'm proud of it. And
that's awesome.
So it comes out, and there are 2 singles out now online, like Spotify and Apple Music and all that. But the album comes out in January.
What are the 2 songs that are out?
There's a song called "Save Me from the Fire" and one called "Elaine."
And the album, what's its name going to be when it comes out?
It's called "Evergreen, Ever Rain." Yeah.
Cool. So it'll come out, and you're hoping in January? Is that the plan?
It comes out January 25th.
January 25th.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah. So I've been on tour playing these house concerts, just kind of in support of trying to create some buzz, you know, for the album coming out, and I'll just kind of
keep doing it,
perpetually be on tour for the next 2 years or whatever. So,
are you already working on new songs?
Always.
You just always have like a little scrapbook. You're just working on something.
I do. I have a 3-ring binder, and I type all I have terrible handwriting, so I type up all my lyrics on a typewriter, and then I'll edit in pencil.
Yeah.
And I put them in like a page protector and stick them in alphabetical order in this 3-ring binder. And so for this,
old school, man.
Yeah,
you actually use the word typewriter. So
well,
I mean, that tells you.
Yeah, no, it feels like you're making something.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
like
it's
there's nothing romantic about typing up lyrics on a MacBook or whatever. You know,
right.
So, yeah, you have this piece of paper that's got ink that was, you know, that was pressed by a piece of metal, and you know, it's like it sounds very maybe it sounds corny, but I enjoy it. And anyway, so I wrote about 40 or 50 songs for this album, and we recorded 12, and so whatever I didn't use, it's always potential to be used on another record.
Potentially.
But in the meantime, I just write and keep filing the songs in.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's always a list going.
Yeah. Well, if people want to track you down or find out about house concerts or find out about the music, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I have a website. It's just michaelmcarthurmusic.com.
I'll make a link to it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I mean, all of the things. So.
Yeah, all the things.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Boyd. Hi, everybody. My name is Michael McArthur, and this is a song called Elaine. Just as I'm watching through crystalline sky, the answer it comes, even for eyes like mine. Winter breeze ties me to her perfume skin. Call all my senses now. She's peppermint twin. Maybe love is all I need. I've been low below my knees. Close my eyes so I can see. I've grown tired of the same small things. Elaine, you're not your body. You're not your skin. Beauty ain't the bones you've been hidden in. So where do we go, love, when the body dies? And what do you see now when you close your eyes? Alright, maybe love is all you need. Have you been low as low can be? Close your eyes so you can see, and never mind the momentary things. Elaine, we're all birds, we all fly. And we all live to touch the sky. And maybe love is all we need. If you've been low as low can be, close your eyes, see what you see, and never mind the ever fleeting things. Elaine,
That's it for another Good Gracious episode. Of course, you can find all the episodes online at www.goodgracioushow.com. You can download them if you like to have them on your device through iTunes, Stitcher, all that other stuff. You can tell your grandmother that it's just a radio show and just click on the website and let her listen. It's a fine way to do it. You know, podcasting is the new radio, or the radio of the future, so to speak. So we're kind of going back in the back to the past for the future, which is kind of crazy when you think about how radio began as stories and radio theater was so big, and now it's back again. So, you know, keep holding on to those albums, and those wooden nickels are going to come back in style one day. Anyway, also, all the social media, you want to check it out on Facebook or Instagram, please do. And I'm down at Wonder Shop in Counter Park, Atlanta. If you're ever in the neighborhood, give me a shout. Swing on by. Doing some good stuff. Got some great plans for 2019. Trying to expand things a little bit and deliver to some of you fans some even more valuable, wonderful, artsy stuff. So, until we talk again, be a good neighbor, hug someone, and we'll see you next week.